What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Talkin Sports with Jake. Hope we're doing well. Nick Alfidi is back on the show. Nick, how's it going?
I can't. My team's still in the playoffs, so I can't. I can't complain.
Right.
I can't say the same about college, but I will take it.
That's right. Georgia unfortunately lost to the Fighting Irish, in the quarterfinals. Not having a quarterback did not, I'm sure, played a big role in that. But we'll talk about the national championship later. But we have a bunch of stuff to talk about, all football based. Let's start with the Patriots filled their. I talked about this the other day a little bit, but the Patriots filled their head coaching vacancy. First team to do so. They hire Mike Vrabel, former Tennessee Titans head coach and longtime Patriots player. Before we got into coaching, as their head coach. So Nick, what are your thoughts on the Mike Vrabel hire?
I mean, I think just like the Gerard Mayo hire, it's in the same vein of that like Patriot style of trying to be this kind of hard-nosed, do your job. I don't want to say do your job because it's a little bit, it's kind of coined by Belichick, but it's in the same idea. He's Vrabel, just like Mayo, obviously played for Belichick. They're used to the ways of how that dynasty kind of emerged and how it stood and what they stood for. And it's very much a Patriots pick, or I guess a craft pick, if you will. I mean, I think immediately when Vrabel got fired from Tennessee, and you had like the year or two where Belichick was kind of just playing out his contract, and no one was really everyone kind of knew Belichick was kind of out the door. Yeah. Whether it was in the next year or the year after, I think immediately everyone pegged Vrabel to go to New England.
Oh yeah.
But then we were all shocked, like, why'd Gerard Mayo get hired? So I think this was kind of an inevitable decision. It just happened a year later than expected.
Yeah, I've heard things like, they gave Mayo his word a few years prior that when Bill is done, you will get the first shot at the head coach job, and there was something in his contract, and look, so there's a lot of stuff out there, but obviously it didn't work. The roster wasn't very good, but you saw the product in the field. You saw him in the press conference. It went very poorly, and like you said, Vrabel went probably he goes there a year later, whether it was because they gave their word to Mayo and they wanted to give him a shot, or something in his contract, or maybe they're like, or maybe Vrabel didn't want to be to replace Belichick right away. Now there's a year in between, like okay, well, maybe a little less pressure on him, that kind of thing. He had just been let go by the Tennessee Titans, but yeah, he's the coach of the Patriots. Overall, I think it's a good hire. Like I said, it was expected. I mean, he only took the Jets interview to put pressure on the Patriots. I mean,
I don't think anyone willingly take the Jets.
I don't think. I'm wearing the Joe Namath. I don't think I would take that job either. They would have to pay me so much money to go to that dumpster.
I don't think that's a problem though. I think they have enough money.
Yeah. Have to go to that dumpster fire. But yeah, this was. I think we all saw this coming once they fired Mayo. I mean, they fired Drummond. I think like a day or two after after Vrabel interviewed with the Jets. And I think it was like an hour and 22 minutes after the last game. I'm assuming they told him before the game. It's not like, right after he was like, what do you do? Like, right after the game, Kraft's like, comes to my office, like, oh, and then they fire him. So I assume they told him beforehand. But anyway, it's a good hire. I mean, if you're really trying to get away from Belichick, will this work out long term? That's the only question I have. But he's a very good head coach in this league. He proved that he kept Tennessee together. We saw what they were without him. But they obviously were very bad without him. But overall, it's a good hire. I'm not sure what he's gonna do for his staff. I mean, he also knows a lot of guys around the league. I've heard Josh McDaniels could come back as his offensive coordinator. I've heard his defensive coordinator could be a couple of different guys. I've actually heard Rob Saleh's name come up, though he's got a couple of head coach interviews, so I'm not sure if that's in the cards. But we'll see what happens. But overall, I think it's a good hire. He was probably the best head coaching candidate available.
I mean, definitely one of the top, at least with prior experience, I would agree. Yeah, because I mean, I'd probably have in like today's game, I'd probably have an offensive mind. Yeah. That's just my preference. So I mean, Ben Johnson is probably like your 1A, 1B, right? But with prior experience, I agree. That can't be dismissed easily. That is important. Though I do worry. Did you hear his interview? I don't know where it was. Did you hear his comment? How teams that have run the ball 40 plus times have X win percentage. It's like, yeah, because they're winning because they are passing earlier in the game and they have the ability to now run the ball and run the clock out. But I don't know if he knows causation, correlation. I really hope for Drake May's sake they're not running the ball 40 times.
40 times a game,
They do not have a Derrick Henry on that team.
No, there is not a Derrick Henry on that football team.
Yeah, so I really hope he doesn't.
Any means.
I don't think he really. I hope he does not run his offense like that. But like you said, prior experience, definitely helps. So I
mean, I don't think that he will. But again, you never know. You just never know. So, but that's the Vrabel hire. Now let's shift gears to another coach who didn't get fired, though some people thought he should have, Mike Tomlin. So, Pittsburgh Steelers, another first-round playoff exit, was not super competitive. 2014 Ravens, kind of like the floor with the Steelers, was 21-zip at the half. Russell Wilson had like 40 or 30 yards at the half. Was ugly. Mike Tomlin, obviously, you all know the deal. 18 seasons, never had a losing season. Keeps it competitive, but a lack of playoff success has kind of crept into the conversation in recent years, and now there's been a lot of talk. Maybe it's time for a change. So, let me ask you this: what should the Steelers do? Do you think it's time for maybe Mike Tomlin to face some heat, and do you think it's time for change in Pittsburgh?
I mean, it's funny because all my life the Steelers have been competitive, and prior to myself being alive, prior to us being alive, they have been competitive. Yeah. That's been their MO. There's certain franchises that have a certain prestige, and the Steelers are obviously one of those teams. I think the issue with Mike Tomlin, and it's been the issue for the last 6-7 years, and I don't think it's just a Mike Tomlin issue. I think it's more so an NFL-wide issue, and that's really just more about demand versus what's actually there in terms of franchise quarterbacks. I don't think it's a surprise, to me anyways, that once, their franchise quarterback, Ben Roethlisberger, you could say, last 2 years he was kind of a shell of himself, sure. But once he retired, they've been in this no man's land for 6 years.
Yeah.
I think they made the playoffs, I at least want to say 3 times. I know they made it in 21 past year, this year. They've also obviously have never had a losing season under Tomlin. So there is a obviously standard that he sets. And if he were to get let go or he were to depart, there would be, any team that has a coaching vacancy open would still hire him, and I probably still would too. I think the issue with Tomlin is almost he is too good to a fault. He's too competitive, and he's too good of a coach in terms of how he raises a ceiling of a team to put the Steelers in the position to get a quarterback. Now, the one first-round quarterback they've drafted since Roethlisberger retired was Kenny Pickett. Wasn't really, and even then they were picking 14, 15, and you're not gonna in today's NFL. Not going to.
That's the problem because they're not good enough to go on a deep playoff run, but you're not bad enough to get a higher draft pick. So when you have the 15th, the 18th, the 20th, the 22nd pick, you're very rarely able to get a top quarterback.
I would have said, to your point, last year was the year for them to trade up because there was. I think Penix went, or I think Bo Nix, sorry. Penix did go at 9th, I think.
Or 8th,
and he was the 4th quarterback off the board, 5th. Bo Nix was, the 23rd pick in the draft?
I think he was lower than that, but...
I think he was the 23rd pick.
Bo?
Yeah.
Didn't he go 12th to Denver?
I don't know. Some on-the-fly research.
I do agree. Last year was a move to trade out, but then that would have been the kind of thing to where he...
Oh. I'm stupid. I could have sworn maybe they traded up from no. You're probably right.
I know Vikings moved up a spot with the Jets to take McCarthy. But though your point, I do think your point still stands. Yes, it would have cost a lot, but that would have been the year. Last year was the year to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess obviously 12th and 23rd are huge discrepancies, so that's my fault. But the point still stands. I mean, they picked him 12th, and I believe the Pittsburgh had somewhere in the mid-teens.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't have quarterback prospects that you could reasonably draft every year in the middle of the first round. That's just the NFL. You look at Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders. Are both of them really first-round prospects? Maybe Cam Ward. Yeah. Definitely not Shedeur Sanders, but they're going to go in the first round.
Yeah,
because
Cam's probably going to be the first pick, and Sanders, if he gets past the 5th pick, I'd be shocked.
Which, I mean, if you look at, the prospect rankings in totality, like, I wouldn't, if you're just in isolation, in a vacuum, evaluating Shedeur Sanders, I wouldn't put him in as a first-round talent. No. That's not to say he can't work out, but, like, that just shows you how valuable quarterbacks are. And to your point, essentially, the dilemma the Steelers face is you're too good to be in a position to draft a franchise-altering quarterback, and you're really not good enough to really make a run. I mean, I thought this was the year. I thought this was the year, not that they could win the Super Bowl, or even get there, but I thought they could win a playoff game. And that's where the needle has shifted. It used to be with the end of, the 3Bs and the end of the Roethlisberger era was, can we make the Super Bowl? Can we get past the AFC Championship hump? Kind of similar to what the Bills are experiencing right now. Mm-hmm. Now it's turned into, can we win a playoff game?
I know.
And I thought this was the year because Russ, I know his limitations, for the 3, 4, 5 weeks that were leading the division, looked good enough to win a playoff game. Because remember, the quarterbacks they've gotten to the playoffs with. Duck Hodges, I think, was, 2019 was leading them to a 9-7 season. Mason Rudolph played a wild card game last year. I know that was down to injuries, but still, it kind of gives you an idea of what they've been dealing with. So, to me, it's pretty simple. I don't know what... It's obviously simple, what has caused the Steelers to be in this state of limbo. It's because they're too good for their own good, but not good enough, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because the pieces are there around them.
Yeah, the team isn't bad by any means.
No, I mean that defense is still very strong. There's some problems with it, but it's a very physical defense. And we talk about Sean McDermott. I get so annoyed when he talks about it, but it's true. Complementary football exists, right? So if that offense is better and more productive, I think that defense is better.
Yeah.
They have weapons. Mm-hmm. They have skilled position players that are, exciting. What you do at Najee Harris, I don't know. But it's really just down to the fact they don't have I'd say they don't even have the top 15 quarterback in the league, and that's huge. I mean, you see how, the 16th best quarterback getting paid in the 32nd. It's a huge discrepancy. Yeah. It's funny. I've heard the theory that, if you put Mike Tomlin, let's say I know we're going to touch up on this, in the next segment. Mm-hmm. If he's the Jags head coach, where you don't have to you already give him a, franchise caliber quarterback, even if it's a Trevor Lawrence and, your thoughts on him or whatever, there's no denying he's an upgrade from Russ or whatever the Steelers have had. If you put him there, he can elevate the team to be an actual contender. But if you keep him on a team that is still in need of a quarterback, they're never going to be, it's very unlikely they're going to be in a position to pick one, essentially. Yeah. So if you're the Steelers, I don't know what you do. If it were me, I think I probably would consider, I wouldn't fire him. I don't think optically that would work. But a mutual parting of ways maybe is something I would at least consider. Yeah. Whether I do it, I don't know. But you have to consider it after, I think, really, they've been directionless for a couple of years now.
Yeah, that's a good point. They just been stuck. You're honestly in football purgatory, like I said, like we both have alluded to. You're good enough to just get into the playoffs, but you're not good enough to win a playoff game, so you're not going to have a high enough pick to draft a quarterback. So it's hard for the team to truly improve. And I don't think Tomlin's not a bad coach by any means. He's a very good coach. And he would get one of these jobs without much of a problem. Pretty much right away. There are 6 openings left. All 6 teams would try to hire him. And if Tomlin wants to still coach, I'm sure he would. I don't know why he wouldn't get one of these jobs unless he just doesn't like the openings that are available. And none of these jobs are that attractive to me that are left. Like you said, we'll get into that in the next segment. We'll get into that more. But, he's a very good coach. But at the same time, I just think both sides need a change. I don't know how I just don't see this changing because, as long as Tomlin there, he'll be able to get that team to 9-8, 9-7-1, 10-7, pretty much every year, which is cool. But if you're just going to get, shellacked in the first round, you'll end up with the 22nd pick, the 21st pick. It's just going to be a cycle just going to be repeating over and over and over again. And, he hasn't won a playoff game in a while now. So I just don't see under him anything changing. And obviously, you look, all right, is the grass green on the other side? That's always a question. Is it? I don't know. Is there a coach with Mike Tomlin's resume out there? No. There is not. The closest is Mike McCarthy. But that's the closest. But, I do think there's a conversation to be had. Like, the resumes are actually more similar than you think. However, do I think Mike McCarthy is a better coach than Mike Tomlin? No. I can say that without much hesitation. However, I do think it's time for a change. It's just this isn't going anywhere.
All right.
So that's gonna segue nicely into the next segment. So there are 6 other openings: the New York Jets, the Chicago Bears, the Jacksonville Jaguars, Las Vegas Raiders, New Orleans Saints, and Dallas Cowboys. Dallas Cowboys were a little bit late to the party because Jerry Jones decided to just drag this thing out with Mike McCarthy
on his own time.
Yeah, he does. He's like, January 12th, Mike McCarthy's contract's up in 2 days. Now we'll announce we're not bringing him back. I don't think he ever will.
That was so funny to me. Like, I literally, didn't they deny the request for Chicago to interview him just to fire him a week later?
Yes. So funny.
What are we doing?
But, all right, so none of these jobs to me are that
I was gonna say, yeah. I'll let you start this first because I was interested. Do you think none of these jobs are?
Not really. I mean, Troy Aikman alluded to it with Dallas. I don't think it's that attractive because, first of all, Jerry Jones is going to do whatever the hell he wants. Like I said, he operates on his own time. He could have fired Mike McCarthy 2 weeks ago, but he decided to just twiddle his thumbs in his mansion and just sit there. He denied a request. He was like, they're bringing him back. He was like, oh, no. Yeah, we're parting ways. Like, oh, okay. Like, the roster isn't that great. I mean, you're stuck with a mediocre quarterback. Dak's not the worst. Like, is he better than what the Jets have put out the last, many years? Oof. Yeah. But, you're not winning a Super Bowl with him. I mean, you're stuck with him. I look at pieces they have. All right, CeeDee Lamb is a phenomenal receiver. I think that's pretty clear. They have some pieces on the offensive line. Not sure what Regal Daddle is yet. Ferguson's a fine tight end. Defensively, Parsons is a great player. Needs a contract. But they figure that out. He's obviously a piece to build around defensively. Other than that, there isn't a whole lot there. The 2 corners are pretty good. Diggs and Bland when they're healthy. Yeah. Not the best cover guys, but at least from a bullhawk perspective, they're not bad corners. Certainly stars in the NFL. Other than that, there isn't a whole lot on this roster that I love.
Sorry, not to cut you off. I just worry about. I mean, I don't know the exact number, but I know it's a very. I think it's at least 50% of their cap. If they do end up paying Parsons, is allocated to 3 players on your roster.
3 players in the NFL. That's almost now. It's almost impossible to
right. And I would say 2 of them are worth it, right? Micah and CD are top caliber players at their position, and in the NFL, they're worth it. Dak, I mean, unfortunately, that's the going rate for quarterbacks these days. I don't agree that he's worth it, but I also agree within the context of the market, you probably have to pay him. And you could do a whole lot worse than him, which is the dilemma. I mean, he had almost an MVP season a year ago, and again, that says more so about the MVP as an award than his play, which, I mean, look, he played the best season of his career last year. He did turn, obviously, down the stretch, the last couple of weeks was an adventure. But
yeah.
But I just three guys making up half your salary cap is a very difficult game to play because there's going to be some tough decisions you're going to have to make on players that probably definitely deserve a second contract. And from a roster building perspective, that's just hard to do.
It's very hard to do.
You have to hit on day 3, round 2, round 3, round 4 picks as starters, contributors to your team if you're going to do that. I think for me, it's hard to do because you're already committed to it, but that Dak contract is going to be a problem. I mean, a year from now, 2 years from now, it's an issue, right? So if it were me, I would explore I don't know what the trade market would look like for him,
Yeah.
but I would explore it. And then I don't know. You're the Cowboys, you're Jerry Jones. I understand it's almost like the Steelers in the sense of it's hard to be bad because they don't, as a franchise, they don't accept that. But man, if it were me and I was a GM, not a coach, because it's a different conversation, I would plan for a transition year and try to trade Dak and reset the clock on a quarterback contract. That really is the only thing I can think of, because that contract is a huge problem, and
not good.
And you look at those three guys, I say, like I said before, two of them are worth it. One probably isn't, without the context of the quarterback market, and it's a tough decision. I think the only thing I'll say, and I'll give it back to you, is no matter what, 2 years ago I was fooled. Like, literally, I was fooled 2 or 3 years ago in thinking, like, you know what, like, I think it's overblown. The Cowboys can draft pretty well, and they still can draft pretty well, by the way, for all his faults, I think. And I don't know how much, say, Jerry Jones has in drafting, right? But for their faults as an organization, they can draft well, as evidenced by the guys they're paying, and those second contracts do. But I was fooled. I really thought, I was like, yeah, they can draft well. They're making playoffs appearances. They're winning the division every now and then. They have the pieces, those cornerstone defensive pieces. They have their franchise quarterback. What you want to call him, he is at least I think a quarterback that's in the conversation of top 12. Right, he's kind of in that like bubble. And I thought, like, yeah, like let this thing ride and see where it can go. Maybe they make an NFC Championship appearance, and hey, if you make it there, you're 2 games away from winning this entire thing. So I was very much on the Cowboys train last couple of years, and then now I look at it and I go, okay, Jerry's kind of shown his behind a little bit.
Yeah.
It really kind of revealed how much say he has within the organization. I think people are finally catching up to that.
Yeah.
Or at least admitting it publicly. And now, I kind of feel they're a little bit, again, directionless, just like the Steelers. And it's really just because of Jerry.
Yeah, Jerry Jones, he's one of the only owners, maybe the only owner, maybe in all of sports, who, is interviewed almost after every single game. He obviously is the face of the Cowboys, has been for a very long time. So, and we all knew that. And I think if you really look deeply, even a few years ago, you could see like, okay, he has more control than he should. He's kind of doing kind of some stupid things. But like you said, these last couple of years, I think people are really starting to see, right? It's like, I'm sure he has, like, when it comes to the draft, I think he has, like, football guys that help. He might listen to them to an extent, but he's always had the final say and everything for the most part. And now it's just like the stuff that's happening. The way he's handled a lot of these things. Like, you see, he had Kellen Moore and Dan Quinn as coordinators, and now Kellen Moore is having a lot of success as a coordinator in Philly. Dan Quinn just took the Commanders to the playoffs. Just won a playoff game. On the road against the Buccaneers in his first year as a head coach there. You see some of the players that they've let out of the building, guys like Amari Cooper, and and guys like that have had success, elsewhere. You see him, not go after a guy like Derrick Henry, who made a lot of sense for them last year, in the year he's had. I think Jerry said something like, "Oh yeah, we can't really afford him," or something like that, or he said something like, basically, we're not going to go after him. And obviously, the tandem of Rico Dowdle and Zeke Elliott did not work, and Derrick Henry is still one of the top backs in the league, obviously. So there's no football operations guy with a conscience that would do all this stuff and expect to not get clowned on it and expect to have a successful football franchise football programs. It's clear that he probably has more say than he should. At this point, he's just doing some silly stuff. But the rest of the openings, Jets, Bears, Jags, Raiders, Saints, are any of these attractive at all to you?
So there's a couple of candidates. There's a couple of guys I think, or teams I think, that are in contention. I'll tell you the one team I'm immediately throwing away is the Saints. They're just salary. They could say the salary cap isn't real all they want. They could say, hey, we're doing the right process. We're just not getting the results we want. Newsflash: if you're not getting results after 5 years, maybe the process that you're implementing is not working. So instantly, New Orleans isn't. I would say Jacksonville, or it's between Jacksonville and Las Vegas, and I'm gonna lean towards Jacksonville, with the idea that you have the best quarterback of that bunch. It's a no state income tax. It's Jacksonville. It's a really nice place to live, and I think that does go into the minds of the coaches. It's obviously a talented team in a division that honestly isn't all that great. I understand Houston is there, but Tennessee is spinning its tires. So is Indy. So it's a division you have, a pathway to instant, competition and success, in my opinion, because I was going to say Chicago, right? Talent-wise, I think they're the most talented team of that bunch. And you have a rookie quarterback, the number 1 overall pick, on a second year of his rookie deal with talent around him, and there's a lot less holes to fill than you would imagine for a team picking first 2 years ago. But obviously they traded up for it. But you look at the NFC North, like, they could still be the 4th best team in that conference. I mean, that division is stacked, and I understand, Sam Darnold's probably leaving, but let's be real, Kevin O'Connell is probably the quarterback of that coach or of that team. Sorry, like it's between the Lions and obviously what they're doing right now, Minnesota, and what Kevin O'Connell's doing and Flores is doing. Even if they lose him, I think they're still a team that is leaked a playoff team. And then Green Bay, I understand Jordan Love's regressed a little bit, and there's a need for a little bit more of an adult in the room in terms of skill position players, but those are still 3 like NFC playoff teams at least.
They'll be in the playoffs,
Right. So Chicago is a tough job just from the standpoint of within your own division. The Packers went 1-5 in their division, should have won 0-6, and they made the playoffs.
I know, yeah.
So I'll go Jacksonville. I think the situation there, both within the organization and the division, is, I think, a kind of, what's the word? Like, just, it is plausible for success to happen there. The only thing that gives me pause is the ownership. That's really it.
Yeah, that's a problem. I mean, Shad Khan, one thing I've heard is that he's just never around. Like, he just kind of hangs out in Arizona. His son is just a disaster. Like, he cares more about his crappy wrestling company than the football team. His son Tony. But yeah, I've heard on top of this, they haven't had. Doesn't done a good job running the football team. I heard he's not really around. So like, if you need to talk to him, I heard you kind of have to get him on the phone, which helps. And also like, I've heard he's pretty patient, but at the same time, like, he goes on a Zoom call with Trent Baalke, who.
Oh, I can't believe I forgot him. That is
another
also
concern. That he's
an issue.
That he's been still a GM. I don't know why he's still a GM.
Right.
He goes on like that Zoom call, and like he says in front of Baalke, "Oh yeah, if a coach wants him gone, I'll fire him." Practically, it's just like, what is going on over there? So, the ownership there is really bad. The roster isn't good. However, it's probably the best of this bunch. They're in a situation where if they can build a good roster, they could win that division. We don't know what's going to happen with Houston. Obviously, we'll see what happens, but they could at least be the second best team in that division for a while. Like you said, Colts are kind of don't know what they're doing. We're not really sure what's going on in Tennessee either.
Yeah.
And Lawrence, it's something. We don't really know what Caleb is yet. The Raiders have nothing. Derek Carr's declining. The Jets, we don't know what's going on over there. We never know what's going on over there. And so, like, it's something. I mean, you just paid him, so he's going to be your quarterback for the next bunch of years, whether you like it or not. So if you can build a team, which might be a big if because it's the Jaguars and Trent Baalke is still the GM. Obviously, the Khan family isn't great. But I guess that's probably the most attractive spot left.
I mean, Las Vegas is, obviously it's a... Excuse me. Las Vegas is obviously like a team that you have a bunch of salary cap, new stadium. Obviously, you're in a division with Mahomes and the Chiefs.
Yeah.
An ascending Chargers team. an ascending Broncos team, so it's another issue, and just as with
if
Chicago,
yeah,
right?
it's
Tough
like
division.
yeah, like even if you improve massively, you might still be in last place in your division.
Right. I do think the one, I guess, kind of ace in their sleeve that they have is the Tom Brady partial ownership thing.
That's helpful now, yeah.
Whatever his, I know he has at least sizable enough role within ownership to have a say in who their quarterback is moving forward, who's their head coach moving forward, and that can't be understated. His sway within NFL circles is certainly something to keep an eye on. Obviously, you have Brock Bowers. You did have Devontae Adams. He did leave. But you do have a need, I guess, for another skill position player in the room next to Bowers and Jacoby Myers. But there's obviously a talent gap that needs to be filled. But there's still pieces. I don't know what Max Crosby's doing. He's kind of been flirting with a trade request for the last couple of years, but if you keep him on, I think that's where like an Aaron Glenn. I know there's been I think the biggest thing is, not to jump the shark, but Ben Johnson has been getting a lot of rumors, and there's been a lot of kind of hearsay that he is going to be the Raiders' next coach. Mm-hmm. If that does happen, I mean that's an A+ hire in my opinion. I think he's the best candidate on the market right now, even without prior experience. I mean, I understand the Lions roster is stacked with talent, right? Offensively, best O-line in the league, or at least a top 3 O-line or unit, skill position players for days. But I mean, the work he's done with Detroit has been incredible, and I think he's deservedly like a top candidate. I think one of the best candidates in the last couple of years to come out. Mm-hmm. So much so he decided to stay. Like he could have easily left last year, and he said, "Oh no, I'm going to wait until the opportunity I like the best." And clearly to him, the chance to get to work with a clean slate, cap space, excuse me, that he can use to instantly, I know the free agent class isn't great, but there's something attractive with cap space maneuverability. Yeah. Obviously, the chance to work with Tom Brady in any capacity, and the chance to have his say at quarterback. That cannot be understated. So there's a lot, I guess, to like about Las Vegas, and if they can, if Ben Johnson does go there, I mean, yeah, they'll have some issues competing immediately, right? That division is a problem for them, but maybe, look at the Steelers. Maybe it isn't so bad to have a down year next year in a QB class. Obviously, we don't really know with quarterbacks until the year of. Yeah. Right? They take a little bit longer to develop and kind of appear. I guarantee you it's going to be better than this class of quarterbacks. So I could see how Vegas could be up there with a Chicago and Jacksonville, like we discussed.
Yeah, that's probably what I've heard too. As for who's going where, I've heard I've heard the same thing with Ben Johnson to the Raiders. Like you said, Tom definitely helps. Yeah, it's hard to kind of guess right now how much say he has. I'd be shocked if he does not have a good amount of say in who the next quarterback is. Seems like he's having some say in picking the coach. I don't know if he'll necessarily make a ton of draft decisions, but they would be remiss if they didn't at least run by, hey, we're thinking about drafting this guy at quarterback. What do you think? Something like that. But I think at the end of the day, Mark Davis and company will probably make the final decision on that, I would think. Yeah. But yeah, I've heard Ben Johnson lost to the Raiders. Jacksonville, it might honestly be Robert Saleh. He's getting there's a lot of buzz there.
I don't think that would be, I know we have to move on, so I only touch on this a bit. And I'll throw it to you because obviously you're the Jets fan.
Yeah.
I think his run with the Jets was a little bit, I don't think it gave him a fair shake of things. Like, yes, he has his issues, but as a defensive mind, I think he's very solid. I mean, he gave Josh Allen, before this season anyways, one of the biggest issues in his tenure and one of the hardest times. I mean, his work in the past couple of seasons defensively has been great. It's been the offensive side of the ball, and obviously the quarterback that has been an issue.
Yeah.
This year, I know the defense did regress, but like I would, if it were me, obviously he wouldn't be a top choice for me. But Saleh as a defensive mind, I would give him another shot if I couldn't get one of those top 3 or 5 candidates.
Yeah. Okay. Look, I do think the reason he's getting buzz is that because the Jets were so bad after they fired him, people kind of forget how poor he was as a head coach overall when it comes with the clock management and stuff like that. He is definitely a better coordinator than he is a head coach, and there's a lot of guys like that. I would take him as a defensive coordinator in a heartbeat. There's not many guys on the market that are a better defensive coordinator candidate than him. There's a lot of guys I would take before him as a head coach. However, if Jacksonville is having trouble attracting top candidates, they just need to get somebody in there. Like you said, at the very least, he should be able to fix that defense, which definitely needs a lot of work. And again, he cannot manage the clock for his life. The accountability isn't great. The fire that you saw in San Francisco, I didn't see in New York. Maybe his first or second year a little bit, but at least the last 2 years, didn't really see it. But, like, is he better than, probably like a Kellen Moore or Steve Spagnuolo or, like, Arthur Smith or Matt Nagy? Yeah. I would say if Jacksonville is stuck in, like, oh no, we're stuck with, Arthur Smith, Matt Nagy, the really bottom of the barrel candidates, Robert Saleh is probably a better candidate because you're going to need to hire a top-tier offensive coordinator. You're going to need to hire a really good staff because of how bad he is of managing the clock. But at least you'll play a hell of a lot of defense.
Right, yeah.
All right, so let's talk on the coaching openings. Let's do some game picks, and then we'll close this thing out. Let's start with the national championship, which is on Monday, 8 o'clock Eastern Time. Number 8, Ohio State is number 7, Notre Dame.
I have a really, maybe it's just salty grapes with me in Georgia, but I have a bad feeling about the competitiveness of this game. Obviously, you saw the spread
myself.
You saw the spread was pretty sizable.
Yeah, it's at -8 right now.
It's not TCU Georgia bad. I think we were like definitely at least double-digit favorites in that game. No, I don't think this is going to be TCU Georgia again. I hope it's not for the sake of the sport. I don't want it to be. I want it to be a very close and competitive game. But I think for whatever reason, the Michigan game, I think Ohio State, heading into the season, the last couple of years they've been bullied by Michigan. Yeah. Physically. And I think heading into, for most weeks, most opponents, you develop a game plan, a week, 2 weeks out, and you kind of gauge it on feel of what your team's strengths are in the moment. I think with the Michigan game, that game plan and that I've heard this this is not a me thing, but when I heard about it, I was like, yeah, this probably makes a ton of sense. That the game plan and the way in which they have been beaten in the past angered Ohio State enough to say, look, this is a year that we have roster talent-wise with how Michigan is in transition, a sizable advantage on our roster. And we could win no matter what style we play. Whether it's playing a finesse-style game and scoring 50 on a team or physically dominating a team and winning, with 300 yards rushing. I think they went with the latter. They wanted to make a statement to Michigan and say, look, we are,
definitely,
those last couple of years, we're ticked off about it, and physically we want to dominate you. Yeah. And they couldn't do it because that's not their them.
Game. No.
That's not them.
That's Michigan. That's not Ohio State.
Right. Yeah. And look,
I think exactly what happened. I think not to cut you off, but I think it's what angered Ohio State fans. It's like you tried to beat Michigan at their game. It's like Michigan was a 5-loss team. If you just play your game, there's no reason why you shouldn't win by probably 2 or 3 scores. But they tried, like you said, they tried to beat Michigan. It didn't work.
I mean, and that Michigan defense is still obviously with the talent on their defensive line and at corner, the remnants of that national championship defense are still there. It's still a great defense. Offensively, they're challenged, I know, but I mean, that defense won them the game single-handedly, and it's because, like you mentioned, Ohio State tried to do something that they're not. And I think, they're lucky it's a four. Let me just put it this way. They're lucky it's a 12-team playoff. I don't know what it is about Ohio State, when a format changes, they win the national championship, or at least they're in the game. I mean, the 4-team playoff gets announced the first year, and they get in because, that dominating performance against Wisconsin, all those years ago. And if it was in the BCS era, they're not there, and they were the best team that year. I think the same thing is to be said about this year. I think they've been the best team with Oregon all year, and Oregon got, I don't think that was the best of Oregon in the Rose Bowl for sure, but those two teams played. We saw what happened. Ohio State beat them pretty convincingly. Yeah. And I think Ohio State's, correctly the best team in the country this season, and I think they would be the correct national champions, but under the 14 playoff, they wouldn't have been in. Yeah. I don't think that's, I can get on a tangent. I'm not going to, but I will say I don't think the 12-team playoff is something I would have personally done. I would have wanted to keep it at 8 teams, which, hey, I think they're the 8th team.
They are.
Yeah, right. So they would have been in anyways, but yeah, I would have personally kept it at 4 if I didn't want to expand just because most years we didn't really have a 4th team in the country that could size up with those top 3 teams, and this year I think was a little bit of a not as bad as last year where I thought there was like 7 or 8 teams that could. Yeah.
That's what made them kind of rush it in, because last year was an anomaly. Usually there's maybe a 5th, maybe a 6th, and you can make a case for it, but last year, you could have.
Right.
Made a case for a few other teams.
But, whether you want to call it like luck of the draw or, whatever the case may be, if you're anti-expansion, pro-expansion, I don't think it can be denied that Ohio State is the best team in the country this season. They would be the correct national champions, and I think they're going to get, sorry I drew that out a little bit too long, but I just don't see how this Notre Dame team stacks up offensively. Their defense is incredible for sure. There's something that can be said about how well they are defensively. I think over the course of the last 3 weeks, they've shown that. They're a resilient group. They're a well-coached group. Marcus Freeman's doing an incredible job with Notre Dame. It's funny that Brian Kelly leaves and they're a national
something to be said about that for sure.
Yeah, but look, I just don't think they can win with Riley Leonard at quarterback. No offense to him. It's just they have a good running game. They have a great defense, but you can't. I don't think in this day and age you can win with like 150 passing yards on the. There is a script for Notre Dame to win, sure, but it requires Ohio State playing a game that's less than their potential. I think that's the same path TCU had.
Yeah.
Obviously, the discrepancy in the teams, I want to make it clear, is not that big, but it's the same idea where if Ohio State plays their B-plus game, they're probably winning this game. And if for Notre Dame to win, they need to play their A-plus game.
But yeah, just to wrap up the national championship here, I think Notre Dame's defense will keep them in it because of how good the defense is. They might be able to limit that offense a little bit. But I could see, especially maybe in the first half, as we get maybe a little bit into the third quarter. But I think by at least the fourth quarter, Ohio State will pull away. They're just too. They have too much firepower. When Riley Leonard's going to have to step up and make some big throws, I don't have confidence he'll be able to make a ton of them. Like you said, he can make plays with his leg. He's a good athlete, and they have a great running game. That defense is really good, but they just don't have the passing game to compete with Ohio State. And as good as their defense is, Ohio State, they also have a good defense. So it's hard to see Notre Dame getting too much going on offense. And again, Riley Leonard's going to have to make some big throws, and I don't see him doing it. So
right.
I have Ohio State winning, and I think I think Notre Dame will be in it maybe in the first half. But I think Ohio State will pull away in the end.
Right.
All right, let's finish off. We have game picks for the divisional round of the playoffs. So Saturday at 4:30 on ESPN or ABC is Texans Chiefs at Arrowhead.
So this is I love this. I think this round is probably the best in football, just because I mean, it's between this and the wild card, but like we talked about off air before the show started, the wild card round sucks, honestly, sometimes because
it was not very good this year.
Yeah, I mean, well, you had like one or two competitive games.
Yeah, besides
right?
Washington, Tampa, the rest of them are pretty much blowouts.
Right. Yeah. I mean, even I guess Green Bay a little bit, but
yeah,
it's just I think they need to do away with the 7th round seeding, but we'll they're not going to.
No shot. Yeah.
Money, but I think this round is probably the best in football, just because there's always one team that I won't say Washington doesn't deserve this, because they definitely do. But if you're going, I guess Washington and Houston are kind of the two teams that you're like, I wouldn't have said they're going to be divisional round teams, and they're here. But I even we'll talk about Washington in a bit, and we're starting with Houston. I don't think it's totally out of the question for either team to win. I think Houston specifically, because their defensive line is great, and Casey's tackles are a problem right now. Obviously, Mahomes' maneuverability in the pocket and manipulating the pocket makes it a little bit easier to deal with that. But I still will lean Kansas City, just because I worry about C.J. Stroud having only Nico Collins really to throw to, the loss of Diggs and Dell. I think if you lose one or two, you still have a great group of receivers, but it's not like this world-changing, core.
Yeah.
Losing both of them, especially in the way they did, I don't think Diggs comes back. I think it was always going to be a one-year rental anyways, but I don't think he comes back. Dell, I mean, who knows?
I don't know if he'll play next year.
Yeah. So I do worry about Mechie and Hutchinson's ability to win vertically and just, cause any concern for KC, just because you have you have a McDuffie who I think will definitely limit Nico a little bit more than he was against LA. And keep in mind, Houston also didn't find a lot offensively until later in that first half, and I think there was a sort of snowball effect of, again, complementary football, right? The Chargers offense stalling, turning the ball over, putting the defense in disadvantageous situations. So I'm going to go with Kansas City just because they're home. And it's just you have a team that I think is ascending at the right time. I mean, I know everyone's saying, oh, Kansas City's getting lucky, the amount of one-score games they won, blah, blah, blah. But if you look at the last 3-4 weeks, I think they've really started to turn it on. And there is something to say about, maybe they have been saving some stuff, some scheme. And look, they've earned the benefit of the doubt at this point. They're two-time defending Super Bowl champs going on a three-peat. I think they can be given the benefit of the doubt. I do essentially worry. It really, to me, I've realized this has not been a very coherent analysis of the game, so I'm trying my best. But essentially, I think what it comes down to is, does the Houston defensive line stress the tackles of the Chiefs enough? And do they get Mahomes down to the ground, which is very hard to do. Now, they have the guys to do it, Anderson and Daniel Hunter. But I don't think they're going to enough, and I don't think C.J. Stroud's going to be able to make enough plays with the limitations of that offense. I also don't think they're going to be able to run the ball as well. Kansas City is one of the best, I think, by DVOA metrics and just regular run defense metrics, one of the best rushing defenses in the league. So for those kind of three things, I'm going to go Kansas City. And I will say they're going to keep it close, because Kansas City hasn't really shown the ability to blow out a team.
No.
But I'm going to go Kansas City.
I'm also taking the Chiefs. They're at home. It's very tough to go into Arrowhead and play. That's one of the best home field advantages, really, in all sports, if you ask me. And, the Houston defense is really good, so I do agree with you. They will definitely keep this game close. Chiefs been playing one-score games pretty much all year. I mean, they've won God knows how many different ways. Blocked field goals, game-winning field goals. They've won all, they've gotten lucky for, bad turnovers by the other team late in games. But, I think Chiefs pulled out. Second off the line is also really bad. They've had guys in and out all year. I think Stroud will be faced under duress, which he has been pretty much all season, especially down the stretcher. How he was under a lot of duress last week against the Chargers. He was able to get the job done, of course.
Right.
But I just don't see Mahomes and the Chiefs making nearly the mistakes that the Chargers made last week. So the Texans defense is going to be under a lot more pressure. Like you said, they just don't have the full group that they should have with all the guys they have out. So, like you said, Texans have the pieces up front to maybe cause Mahomes a little bit of trouble. The tackles are banged up. They've been circling through tackles lately, but I think the Chiefs will pull this one out. Next game Saturday night is at 8:00 on Fox. Commanders at the Detroit Lions.
So this is a game that, like I was alluding to before, I wouldn't have expected Washington to get that far. I think it's very much in the vein of, I don't want to say Detroit from last year, because Detroit had a legitimate shot for the Super Bowl. I will allude it to like a Tampa Bay from last year, in the sense of Baker and the Bucs last year weren't really expected to do what they did. Now, with the success that he's had under that scheme and with the weapons that he's had and that defense, we knew it was a talented team still. But I don't think anyone expected last year's Tampa team to get to the stage they did. I think Washington's very obviously had a schedule. This is the best case scenario in terms of getting a rookie quarterback on board, a new head coach on board in the same year, and getting to a divisional round. In a division that is tough, I understand Dallas isn't what they were last year or 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And I understand that even Philly isn't really, well, I know Philly's Philly, but even they, to a degree, have had some faults. With Sirianni, whether he's actually the coach or not, or is it just the coordinators? But that's still a very, very tough division, and I don't think Washington, even if they do get blown out, which I don't think they're going to, I think it's going to be they're going to be able to score the ball just because Detroit's defense is so banged up. Glenn is doing a lot with a little right now.
Yeah.
But ultimately, you can only survive so much war of attrition, or you can only, go through so much, right? So I think Washington will have success, especially at the rate of which Cliff calls plays. He's very much a, college. His college influence is very easy to pick up on because they call plays. I don't think they run as many plays. Like, I don't think the amount of plays they run is necessarily like so much of a discrepancy between them and, say, like a Detroit. But the rate at which they run a play, so the amount of time between plays, is very much college influence, collegiate influence, if you will. So I think they'll have success in wearing down this Detroit defense and scoring, but they're very much ahead of schedule in the fact that defensively there's a lot of holes on that team. And I think Detroit is just too much. I don't think they're going to lose this game, essentially, is what I think. I don't think the offense is going to allow them to do that. This is going to be a problem, I think, that maybe, Philly can exploit, where they have a much better defense, and they're just a more talented team. And I think that's where that those injuries can maybe catch up to Detroit, but I don't think it's going to be here.
I'm with you there. I'm going to take the Lions. The Lions at 9.5, which is kind of crazy. I don't know if Lions will cover that. The over-under is at 55.5, which is really high, but this should be a high-scoring game. That's a big over-under for a second-round playoff game in the NFL, but I think they could go over. This will definitely be a high-scoring game, but Lions, they've gotten a piece or two back on defense. They got Anzalone back, who's a very good linebacker last week, which will help. I think offensively they're going to get David Montgomery back, which is going to help them even more offensively. Jared Goff, I mean, he's not, much more call him an elite quarterback, but he's a good quarterback. He's been here before. They have, more weapons they know what to do with. And, Commanders are very young. I think this will be an exciting game, high-scoring game. We'll see not a lot of punting in this game. One, because there's going to be a lot of points. Two, because both coaches love to go for it on fourth down, especially Dan Campbell, and Dan Quinn is kind of in that category as well. But I think that the Lions win in a shootout. Lions been kind of winning shootouts all year because they've had to, and I think that trend continues. Mm-hmm. But Sunday, 3 o'clock, it's going to be on Peacock. And you might be able to watch it on NBC as well, just like on Cablevision.
Yeah.
Rams, Eagles.
Do you want to start with this?
Sure. I'm going to take Philly. Rams are playing really well. You had a big win over the Vikings last week. Very kind of a statement win. Stafford's been playing well lately. That offense is really good. Defense gets gotten better as the year has gone on. But I think Philly is too much. Although Jalen Hurts has not his best year, and he's a concern. You mentioned Sirianni. Does he truly coach the team? And if not, will that be a problem? Especially going against Sean McVay, who's probably one of the 3 best coaches in the NFL, if you ask me. But I think the Eagles will get it done. They just have so much firepower offensively. Saquon is obviously a huge X factor, and they have a really good pass rush. Secondary is massively improved from last year, so I think in a really good game, I think the Eagles just get by.
I really want to pick.
I want to pick the Rams too.
I think I'm going to go with the Rams. Now,
okay.
What I'm going to say is I think this is the story of the Eagles just as a team the last couple of years. The NFL is very much a quarterback coach league, right?
Yes.
You want, more often than not, the team with the best quarterback and coach wins most games. Philly's been able to, I guess, circumvent this because of how talented their roster is around a coach that maybe not necessarily the best guy for the job, but is maybe he's a placeholder, but they've gotten through with him. Jalen Hurts, obviously, I'm not saying he is by any means a bad quarterback, right? Mm-hmm. But he has his deficiencies for sure. I think even the most diehard of Eagles fans can understand that he has his deficiencies. He very much relies on a Devonta Smith, and an A.J. Brown, and the elite run game that they have. Of course, he contributes to that, but he's very much he's very much a flawed quarterback. Mm. I look at the other side of the ball, other side of the field with the Rams. You have a McVay, who is, like you mentioned, at least a top 3 coach. You could argue he's the best coach in the NFL. And Matt Stafford, who there's been so much talk about who QB 5, 6 is behind those clear-cut 4 guys, Allen, Mahomes, Burrow, Lamar, in any order you want to put it. I think he has probably right now been QB 5, in my opinion. I know I think in past years have been the Rams' fault has been their inability to protect him. He's obviously not mobile, and I worried last season especially, could that line even hold up? That has become one of their biggest strengths, is how well their line has protected him. And I've seen it firsthand. When the Bills played them in SoFi, they lit us up. And that's mostly because our defensive line was completely ineffective. Matt Stafford wasn't touched. And when he was pressured, he was able to, elude the pressure, step up, make a throw. They have a great run game now. They have 2. Cooper Kupp isn't what he was before, granted. But between him and Nakua, those are 2 physical guys that can win at the catch point, and they're sure-handed guys that have a chemistry with Stafford. And Stafford's playing, some of his best football in his career, probably the best. I think he's probably playing better than his Super Bowl run. Maybe close to it. With all that said, I think because of the coach-quarterback, discrepancy, I understand the Rams are not the most talented team in this game. Yeah. They're also not the home team. I will argue they have never been the home team because, there's not many.
That's true. They're far and few between.
Right.
Football in LA is not.
I'll give them credit. I mean, there's been a little bit more fan support recently, but
yeah. That being said, their Super Bowl parade was the saddest thing I've ever seen.
Oh yeah. Well, LA. I mean, obviously, what's going on right now with them?
Yeah, right now. But, If anyone's been affected by that, I hope everything sorts itself out. Right. But yeah, right now.
Which I was gonna say, I was like, they didn't play in SoFi, didn't they? No, not last week.
No.
But it's been true. And one thing you can't deny is they've had to practice some hard counts and some silent counts at home. So they're very much a team equipped. I feel like uniquely equipped to go into a really hostile environment. So I'm going to go Rams. It could blow up in my face, but I'm going to go Rams here.
They can win the game. I mean, look, I hope they win because I despise everything about Philadelphia.
Me too.
But now to the moneymaker, what I think will be the best game in the playoffs. It will be on CBS Sunday night, 6:30. Ravens against Knicks. Buffalo Bills. So, Nick, you're gonna be there, right?
Yeah, I am. Gonna be there. I hope I'm not going to the Bills' funeral right now. I hope so.
So,
I hope not. Anyways,
first of all, if if the result is not favorable for you, will I see you on campus the next day or Tuesday at least?
Probably not. Probably not.
All right, here I'll give you the floor. Make your pick.
So obviously I'm going to be there. I was at the, I was also at the wildcard game last week, and I think it was some of the most scary first drive I've ever been a part of, because
Broncos started off hot with that big throw.
Right, all my big fears of this defense kind of materialized in front of my face. And I understand they didn't score the rest of the game. There's still problems with this defense, and I think that's a thing that Bills fans have accepted and have known, because this was very much supposed to be a transition year. I remember, I did the beginning of the year podcast with you, and I said to your face, I was like, the Jets are winning this division, which is hilarious looking back at it, but it was very much of, I don't believe the team around Josh Allen, and I knew it was still going to be a decently good offense. Yeah. I did worry about our skill position players, how it all kind of come together. And I think there's a big reason why we got Amari Cooper. Now, I understand, you look at his numbers, I think he had 2 catches for 9 yards. I think he's only had 450 yards all season. So I understand you might look at it from that standpoint and be like, how's he really helped the offense out? I think his presence is more valuable than anything. I think there's a very much something to be said about the everything eats mantra that this team has been kind of parading around. It's very much a, pick your poison, right? None of these guys are guys, our 2 tight ends, our 4 skill position, our 4 receivers and our running back. James Cook maybe the most, right? Of guys that they're not really household names. No one really knows who they are. I mean, now they do, but you wouldn't have said going into the season, Khalil Shakir, Keon Coleman, and Matt Collins are going to be guys that are going to be effective players for us. Shakir a little bit more so, but even still, not a number 1 piece in an offense. And our offense has been, I think, the best in the Josh Allen era, from a standpoint of we're able to attack and be multiple offensively, and Josh has been able to, not have to worry about feeding 14, which is something that, I downplayed, but it's clear that it had an impact on him, whether he admits it or not. He's been the most patient quarterback that he's ever been, the most turnover-free quarterback he's ever been, and he's still able to make those 1 or 2 plays that, win you games, like last week, the throw to Ty Johnson. Defensively, I worry about, I don't think we're going to, there's no stopping the Ravens offense, right? It's really, do you hope the Ravens will stop themselves? Yeah. I think it's a really bad matchup defensively for us. We are very much a team built to beat a Kansas City, for example. At least that's how we built our team, where we're very much a finesse team defensively. We're a bit soft and light on the defensive line. I don't say soft mentally. I mean they're very much a light team. There's not much manpower on that defensive line. You have Ed Oliver, who's a very undersized player. The only one tech that we actually have a sizable player at is Daquan Jones, but he's not been what he's been last year or the year before. Well, with all that said, I think the Bills are going to probably let up 28 points at least. And you're going to have to win this game by just outscoring them.
Yeah, it's going to be a shootout.
Shocker, you score more points than the other team, you win. But it's very much going to be Josh Allen has to be super. The defense has to make 1 or 2 plays all game just to steal a possession here or there. I'm going to go Bills. I don't, if you wanted my, honest answer, hand on the Bible, I'm testifying in court, I'd probably pick as a neutral the Ravens. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's a reason we're underdogs at home, even though we never lost at home this season. I'm gonna go Bills because I'm gonna be there, and I do have a feeling though that whether we win or lose, I feel like there's a confidence in this team that wasn't there last year or the year in years prior. Yeah. I'm gonna go Bills 31 to 28. I genuinely think it's a coin flip. That's not a dig at 13 seconds, but it's yeah. If I'm in person for another nickname game that we have to deal with, I might not show up ever again. I'm going to go Bills, but I do and can totally see the Ravens winning this game and why they're favored.
Yeah, this is going to be a phenomenal game. Over-under is a 51.5. I think you should take the over. I think it clears without that much of a problem. Like 31-28 is about what I would probably have, maybe even a little higher. And that clears that over 52. So yeah, these two teams I feel like are somewhat similar. You have two quarterbacks who obviously are at the top, who are both obviously as elite as it gets in this league. Both are very mobile. Both of the top two MVP candidates. Now obviously Allen's a little bit of a different style. He obviously has a strong arm. He's a lot bigger than Lamar, and Lamar maybe is a little more elusive. Maybe they're probably both equally great athletes, if you ask me. Both have really good running games. Both have their supporting casts are good but not great, but their quarterbacks kind of elevate it. Both have good offensive lines. Defenses, both of them kind of have some concerns. Both are bad, but they've been up and down throughout the year. They both had stretches where they've looked really good, but both had stretches where they've let up way too many points than they should have. And so you go into the players, you're like, I don't know. I am going to take the Ravens in this one. High scoring game. I think it'll be the best game of the playoffs.
I think the winner. Sorry, not to cut you off.
Go ahead.
No, continue.
Okay.
I'll save it.
I think I know I think I know from the words you got. I think I know what you're gonna ask. But,
okay.
But to finish up, I just think that I'm having trouble trusting Sean McDermott in this game. He's not a bad coach. Like, I take him as a Jets head coach, considering what they've put out since Bill Parcells retired. To be honest, yes. But
hey, you don't know. You might get Rex Ryan this year. He's the one guy that wants the job.
Exactly. But I worry about him. I'm much more comfortable with John Harbaugh, and I have more concerns with the Bills defense than I do the Ravens. I do have concerns with the Ravens defense. Well, first of all, you're facing against Josh Allen. It's hard to stop Josh Allen. Up front, I'd probably give the Bills a slight edge. In the secondary, 6 weeks ago, I would say I have equally the amount of concern for both teams. Right. Ever since I heard Dean Pease is actually on that staff, has actually had a lot to do with why the Ravens defense has improved. That's actually why his name has popped up to be maybe the coordinator in New England, because he was in Tennessee with Mike Vrabel. He put Kyle Hamilton kind of back in center field, which has helped, which is where they should have been doing all year. It worked the last 2 years to a T, and then they said, "Oh, let's not do that."
I think they were like a little bit more. They were trying to be more multiple defensively.
Yeah, I got what they did. Look, Kyle Hamilton's an incredible player. He's a top probably 3 safety in the league. That's in their first round. The Ravens definitely hit on, but just it didn't make a lot of sense that that's basically what he was doing the last year or two, and it worked a lot. I mean, last year they probably had the best defense in the league. I mean, I get they lost some guys. They lost some coaches on that side of the ball too. So maybe it was just they got used to the different coordinator, and who knows. But so great game. I'm going to give the Ravens the edge.
So I was going to say, well, actually, guess what I was going to say.
My guess is, do I think the winner of this game wins the Super Bowl?
No. Well, I mean, it was in the same vein. I was going to say, do you think the winner of this game beats Kansas City? Because I understand the thought process, but like I feel like the Chiefs are going to surprise a ton of people again, and I think it's more so people don't want to admit it, but like they could easily just three-peat again. Like I know people don't want to, but like they could still easily be the best team in the league.
It's like, look, when I look at it on paper, I want to say no, because the Bills beat them in the regular season. And then, Josh Allen's had a better year than Mahomes, and their offense is just so good. And, the Chiefs' offense isn't what it usually is in past years with the Ravens. They got really close last year, got really close in week 1. If it wasn't for Isaiah Likely's toe being, if he were like a size 9 instead of a size 10, then it goes to overtime. The Ravens are going to be hungry. When it comes to the postseason, they have Derrick Henry this year. Didn't have him last year, obviously, in the playoffs. He was still playing for the Tennessee Titans. So, and I think on paper, the Ravens and Bills are both better football teams than the Chiefs, honestly, for what meets the eye. However, Mahomes in the playoffs is tough to go against that. And also, they do this every year, where, every year, the Bills have actually beaten the Chiefs
Oh, I know.
in the regular season.
Yeah, that's why.
And the playoffs come around, and just and the Chiefs are able to pull it out. Obviously, the Ravens lost to the Chiefs in the playoff last year, when a lot of people, including myself, thought Ravens were actually going to win that game. Week 1, the Chiefs slipped by the Ravens. So, that being said, I'll say this: when I do game picks next week, I might not pick the Chiefs. However, if I was a betting man, I would pick the Chiefs.
Okay. Yeah, because what's your NFC, your NFC and AFC championship is what? So, Chiefs, Baltimore, right, and then
That's what it ended up being.
Detroit, Philly.
Yeah.
So mine would be, I guess, Buffalo, Kansas City, Detroit, LA.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would. It's tough because I do think I am more confidently put it this way. I'm more confident the Bills could beat the Chiefs than they could Baltimore.
That's fair, actually. Yeah.
I don't know if we're going to beat Baltimore, but if we do, I feel like we're going to beat Kansas City.
Like I don't disagree with you, honestly.
Now we could very much lose.
Exactly. Yeah, we never know what could happen. We'll see how this game goes this week. You know, the Chiefs obviously got to get past the Texans. We both picked them to win. I
hope Houston wins.
Exactly. Yeah. You know, that game. Well, I don't know either team. I mean, we saw the Ravens Texans. What was that, like on Black Friday or Christmas?
Yeah.
That game, 31-2 is in football.
I think if
funny.
I think people are the one thing I think the Texans have over every team left in the AFC is their pass rush. I think it's the best in the conference. And
sure, yeah.
That travels and that
sure.
plays. I think I'm trying to get a little bit off track here. Like I'll just, I mentioned it earlier. The only hope for Houston is if they can limit the turnovers and find someone else other than Nico to step up. Maybe get some running game going. I know Joe Mixon has had success against Kansas City in the past. And then just get after Mahomes. Like, the biggest advantage they have in that game is their D-line versus the tackles of Kansas City. Yeah. It's been a problem.
I know. If they can get after Mahomes without blitzing, that gives them the best chance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, I mean, we'll see. Divisional round. It's best round in sports, in my opinion.
Absolutely. That's all we have today. Nick, thank you for coming on.
Of course.
Come back anytime. Until next time, so long. Have a great day.